recording.
Good morning, everyone. Wanted to say hi and welcome everyone to the PACR Zoom video. Sorry, got a little tongue-tied. So our topic for this morning is the water call and what do we do on the first initial phone call. So,
Awesome.
are we going to be able to put up the bullet?
Yep, I'm getting them up there.
Okay. Thank everyone for coming.
There you go.
All right.
And thank Trina for us not having to come.
Oh, she's on it. She keeps us all on. Okay. Our topic for this morning is answering the water call. And so important. I just did a water damage the other night, 2:30 in the morning. Nobody knew who was going to pay. Turned around and left. Okay, and are we asking the right question? The first question, and I know, like I just made a brief comment. It's so important. If you want to get paid, you need to know who's taking care of the initial payment. So, yeah, just made the screen a little bigger.
So now what happened? You said you went out on the call and you turned around and left because they weren't going to pay you, or they didn't know who was going to pay, or what?
Who was going to pay? I got a hold of the owner of the unit, and he's asking for initial price. It's on the third floor. The second floor and first floor are all affected as well. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah, I'm going to mute everybody because I'm getting some feedback.
Okay.
There we go. And I'll unmute in a minute.
Okay. Well, I showed up, asked the tenant, the pertinent information right off the bat. She gave me the phone number to the owner and got a hold of the owner. Yeah, it was the owner, not the property manager. And he needed a price right away. And after looking at the 3 units, I said, well, the initial call is going to be anywhere from $4,000 to $5,000. And he just thought that was way too much. He said he would take care of it himself. The fireman had to break the door down because the homeowner had been, or the tenant had been watching football, got drunk and fell asleep and didn't answer the door. So the neighbors in the basement or in the lower level units ended up calling the fire department, and they could not wake him up. So they ended up breaking the door down in order to get in. It was a hot water heater that was leaking down to the other units. And after getting a hold of the owner of the unit, he just thought that was too expensive. He would send someone in the morning. And so
great.
And so I just said, well, I can't do anything until I know who's going to be paying for the bill. And he said, well, I'm not going to pay that. I left the poor tenant there in squishy carpet. Not much I could do.
Yep. Nope. That's all you can do.
So, exactly.
So the discussion, we've got Steve that joined us too. Good morning.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Hey, Sam, I'm wondering if you couldn't have asked the question over the phone instead of freaking going out there.
Well, it was close to my shop, so I didn't have to. It was less than a mile away, so that's why I just went and they told me. Actually, I think I did ask that question, Larry, and I think the tenant told me that the owner was going to pay because the fireman told the owner he needed to call a restoration company right away. And so, yeah, I normally would have probably done it that way, but it was so close, and I just said, well, let's see what we've got. So, but yeah, it was one of those, hit and miss, and they never did end up calling me back. I don't know how they handled it. Not that I cared at that point, but let's go through the initial questions. The first one.
Yeah, I think it's Andrew that's got a lot of feedback in the background. So, Andrew, you can mute yourself and then come off whenever you want to.
Where's our mute button?
You should have it down on the bottom right hand or left hand corner of your screen.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
If I swipe to the right, it seemed to come up on my iPhone there. It said
Yeah.
tap mute.
Yeah. Okay, so this was all about, are you asking the right questions? And we kind of got into a little discussion about this because some people, like Larry said, did you really need to go out in the first place? Is there a reason for you taking your time? Because your time is super, super important.
Right.
And so some of the questions we wanted to talk about this morning on this little call, there's about 14 of them, and then other questions. So Sam, you could take us through, or
Yeah, let's just start with the initial call, and what would be your initial question. And please, this, if you have any feedback, put it in there, put it out there. I know Steve probably doesn't go out anymore, but he might have an initial question. And the first question, obviously, what is the source of the water intrusion? And in my case, the other night, it was the hot water heater. And when I asked the initial question, they unfortunately didn't know exactly where their water turnoff was. So that was one of the things I asked them, if they were able to stop the water in itself. And unfortunately, they didn't know. And I couldn't walk them through there because obviously I didn't know, they knew it was coming from the hot water heater. They just didn't know how to turn it off. So, and they didn't have a phone where they could send me a picture or anything like that. So when I got there, apparently they had, the firemen were still there and had come up and turned off the source to the building. So now the whole building was without water at 2:30 in the morning. So obviously the most important call is, what is the source and how can you get the source turned off if that is the case. So anyone feel free to join in if they had more of a direct question. It says on our bullet point there, when did it occur? That would be obviously the second most important question. If it happened earlier in the day, did it happen at, when exactly did it happen, if they knew? And the third, obviously, we just kind of touched on that, has it stopped or have you turned it off?
so why are these important? Why is it important to know where the water's coming from?
Well, in my opinion, obviously, you need to know whether it's a contaminated source or if it was more a clean water source, because obviously we handle them both differently. So
I think it's important to identify the source of the water for liability issues as well. So before you show up, if it's groundwater intrusion, then is the insurance going to pay for it? If it's a hot water leak in a rental property, is the owner of the property responsible for it? And a lot of people, when they call you, they have no idea where the source of water is or who's responsible for it. So like Sam was saying earlier, that initial question of asking who's going to pay for it, a lot of times they don't even have an idea or even know how to determine where the source of water is. So that's why it kind of gets important to use your infrared camera and scan walls and identify things as soon as you show up to the job, so you can also help answer those questions for the occupant of the home, because half the time they have no idea.
very true, very true. Especially in the middle of the morning, middle of the night, I mean. Okay, let's scan down some of these. The question there at hand, approximately how large was the area affected? Like you said, by using your infrared or your moisture meters, you're able to determine that. Most people can't determine unless they just start walking on it and see how squishy the carpet is. So, who's all affected? That was one of the questions I asked the individual. She didn't have any children. It was just her and her husband. So fortunately enough, they didn't have any pets. So that was a good indication that, there wasn't alternative questions as far as where are these pets going to go, or if there's elderly people affected, do they need to have a place to stay, or what? So
I think you breezed over one that I know Larry had thrown in one of the conversations, which was how many companies have already been called?
oh, true. That question I did not ask.
And he had a reason for that one. Because sometimes, you know, when you're dealing with people who are really panicky, they want the first person who can get out there. They'll go down the list and they'll call and they'll call and they'll call. And you don't, again, your time is really important. And if they've already called some people who were going to get back to them, or, you know, some people get so excited, they just jump in their truck and head over. It's like, you don't want to show up with a lot of different companies. You don't want to waste your time with that. So, you know, making sure that you're the one that's dealing with them is really, really important.
That's very true. Very true. It was a question I probably, other than knowing that the fire department was there, I didn't know if they had called anyone else. And they were trying to take care of the initial problem, although I thought that the owner or the property manager should have someone, you know, on their, should have a vendor list of someone that they could call. He kind of kept pushing it back. Oh, my maintenance guy can handle it. I said, well, is your maintenance guy, is he certified? Does he know how to handle this? He goes, oh, he handles all these things. He is a licensed maintenance man, I guess, which didn't make a whole lot of sense. Licensed in what? Do you know what I just didn't make a whole lot of sense when I was trying to talk to the owner. So, but yes, that would be very important to ask as well. So,
well, I do think it's a little tricky too in a rental situation. The consumer, the actual person affected may be calling, but the property manager might be calling as well.
Yes, I should have. That's a very important point. So,
Let's
okay.
more on the next page.
All right. Let me see here. The second question, or the second set of questions, is how wet is it? Squishy or standing water? And that's important because you need to know whether, you know, a portable or a truck mount would be necessary. If it's a small area and how wet that area is, makes a whole lot of sense. If you don't want to be emptying a water bucket because you showed up with a portable. Yeah, I found that to be the case. Where exactly is the area that's affected? Is it on the first floor? Is it on the third floor? Is it in an office building? And can it be accessed with a truck mount, or does it have to be accessed with a portable? And yeah, I find that to be the case. Usually we throw a portable in the truck anyway, just because a lot of times people, they don't know. So let's see here. The second question on this page here is the power on or off in the affected area. Andrew, you want to touch on that one? We still have him?
Yeah, he's there. He's just on mute.
Okay. All right. Well, that
a comment with that one.
Okay. Steve, any input on that by chance?
Been very fortunate that I've never been shocked as I walked into some water. I recall one time, and the fire department wouldn't even go in. It was a bond fees, blood bank, and the main had broken. There was like 1.5 feet water in there. And me being naive in my first few years of business, I went through, it was an insurance agency that had called me. I went through their office and in the back hallway and got in with a Wonder Bar and went in there and shut the water off.
Oh,
you know, fortunately, I didn't get killed. But looking back on that, that was probably one of the stupidest things that I've ever done.
well, I recall hearing a story from Larry once where he said he walked down into something, and before he knew it, he was in waist deep water.
Yeah.
In a building that he was unfamiliar with, I think. Yeah, safety is always job one, if not for you, for your technicians. That's the last phone call any owner wants to make, is that something happened or neglected to take that precaution. So,
Looks like Larry just came off mute. Do you have something to say?
Yeah, we did a job where the floor actually sloped, and we started out, it was like 3-4 inches deep, but on the other side of the room, it was about 2 feet deep. And as we entered the area, one of our techs didn't have rubber boots on, and the electrical was affected, and the water was electrified, and he got shocked. And we immediately evacuated the area. Fortunately, he wasn't really hurt, but it sure was a warning for us that we made a major mistake in not testing that first and turning off all the electricity before we went in.
oh my goodness. Well, and that is, I think, the key to all of us in this industry is, safety first. Some of us are war horses, and we just think that, oh, we've done this, been there, done that, and every situation is different. So important, especially for that electrical. So,
Do you guys have some good high-powered LED lighting to take in with you when you do have a situation with the power off?
Yeah, there's some good portable lighting that you can use on that. There's, no, you don't think about it too much when you're standing in water or on water and you go to unplug that light to move it out of the way, you can get shocked real quick.
oh, real quick, I've experienced that not on a water damage, but in my own home, where I just didn't see the lamp sitting in on the tile floor. Son of a gun. Go to turn it off. Oh, I turned it off all right. And yeah, very, very scary. One of the other questions that we have here that I've started using more and more is, are you able to take pictures of the water damage and the affected areas? And it's only the older folks that don't know how to operate their phones or don't have a phone that really can't help you on that. But I find more and more people, if they are able to, supply photos, it makes the job so much easier to, first of all, to make sure that you have the right equipment. And second question is to make sure you have enough equipment as well, too. So that's a question that I ask all the time anymore, is just, can you take any photos? Can you give me an idea? Because a 1-by-1 area could be a tragedy or a tragic compared to, 100-by-20 area. It's a lot different scenario in that particular case. The question at the lower part of the answering the water call is, what surfaces are affected by the water, such as carpets, flooring, drywall, and ceilings? This there again, lets you know if it's a one technician job or if it's going to be more than that. Because one fella showing up to a large area gets people going, well, this isn't enough. Or if it's a multi-level building, it's there again, more than one person can really handle. So real important to ask as far as what areas are affected and, what kind of scenario you're walking into. So.
Do you think videos would be as effective or better for people to use too?
I do. I'm a firm believer in utilizing as much as you can before you get on the project. So it makes everything so much more easier, and the video is helpful. But there again, a lot of times folks are just they're kind of in panic mode. So, but
I have problems with videos in terms of trying to send those to somebody, but you could do a video call, I guess, because they're usually too big.
I've been able to utilize the FaceTime as well too, and that seems to help if you have an iPhone. As far as determining and trying to figure out exactly what's the source of action. So.
And I think as far as the surfaces and things like that as well, I mean, this is a super limited list because it could be affecting, furniture, could be affecting clothing, there could be a lot of things that are affected with the water. So don't just limit to these. That would be my comment.
Thank you. And I would agree with that comment.
Well, in the old computer systems, I mean, I don't know how many of us, I'm on a laptop now, but the computers were usually sitting on the floor. And that would be a hazard to the computer and to people entering the room.
And I know we used to do a lot of high-end residential, or sometimes these big businesses have artwork and, you know, some really beautiful sculptures or different things like that that are in there that really are important to people. And there's always a question of, can you take out some of your personal belongings, or should they ask that question? Maybe there's a little bit of feedback on that.
Well, definitely things that are valuable, things that are irreplaceable. Yeah, I mean, those are always seem to be the case. There's nothing worse than coming in and seeing heirlooms or area rugs that have been just submerged in water, and you know, what's the plan of attack for that? Especially because you're talking with the person who's been affected by this. You know, those are things that are their biggest concerns as well too. So,
But there again, you don't want to send somebody into a room where they haven't turned off the power to go get their valuables out either.
well, that could be depending on the amount of water. Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know, I've seen isolated areas in rooms where, yeah, the first thing you do is walk in and start yanking things out, and that's, you know, there again, a good plan, a strategic plan is important, and asking all these pertinent questions are important to you know, handling the job in the correct way. So.
I can move on to the next page, and this is the last page of questions.
Okay. Let's see. Have you or anyone else started working on the affected area? There again, going back to the question is, how many companies were called? I've been on projects where I've started them, and before I know it, either the adjuster or someone else has showed up that's responsible for the payment, and they've asked me to stop. Don't need your help anymore. And I said, that's not a problem. I need to be paid now. So I've gotten into a few hassles over that, but usually I try to solve that problem right away. I want to know who's going to be paying before I start doing
Looks
anything.
like Andrew just jumped on. It looks like he's got a comment.
Yeah, as far as payments go and figure out who's paying, I'm one of the few restoration contractors that doesn't work for insurance companies at all. So I always have paperwork that says whoever is in the property and living in the property is responsible for paying me. And I don't know if anyone else does that or if that's unique or not. But I have had cases where I have had to go after the actual tenants of the property because they signed my paperwork, and then they end up paying me, and then whoever owns the property pays them back. I was told that that's unique. I don't know if that is. I'm not sure if anyone else out there is doing that or not.
No, I've done that. I've done that before. I never start a project unless somebody signs on the bottom line.
Yeah, because I don't care who pays me, and I don't feel like it's my
touch
job
it.
to even find out who pays me, as long as the people living there have agreed to pay me.
Right.
Well, I find I'm kind of in the same case as you are, Andrew. A lot of the work that I do is all, you know, we work with home builders, we work with property managers, and property management companies, they carry such a high deductible. They're usually the ones that just, you know, they're going to cover the cost, which makes it easy on my end. Home builders, the same way. They're pretty much self-insured. You know, they're going to be covering the cost as well, too. But when it comes to out of the ordinary or referrals or something like that, I always try to get that, obviously the authorization form signed, but try to get a credit card number or something to, or even a check. Write me a check, you know, I won't cash it. I'll just hold it until we're, you know, either finished with the job or, you know, at the completion of it. You know, as long as everyone knows, nobody likes any surprises, whether it's the insured or the uninsured or yourself. So not too many times have I gotten stiffed on that. In fact, I can't even remember the last time that's even happened. Having good customers obviously makes a big difference as well too. I noticed one of the questions here is, are you the owner? And that pretty much tells you right off the bat, who's going to be covering the cost of that. Now, do you?
Larry just came off mute, so I think he may have something to add to this too.
I was going to tell you about a job we did on Christmas Eve many years ago. It was a large hotel in Boulder, and on the top floor, a 12-inch water pipe broke, and it took the fire department several hours to be able to cap it and shut it off. The whole hotel flooded, and multi-level, obviously, all the way to the main floor. We responded with full crews. When we arrived, they signed all of my paperwork, gave us the keys, and told us they'd be back after Christmas. And we were like, okay, so you're giving us authority to do what's needed? And he said, yep, do whatever you need to do to make this project right. Didn't ask for any estimates or anything else. We proceeded to extract water for several days, and we started manipulating all of the contents, and we covered the ballroom with some proper material to protect the floor covering, started moving some of our contents that direction, brought in desiccant truck-mounted units and tons of equipment, as you can imagine. And on the third day, which was after Christmas, the owner showed up with the adjuster, and they fired us. They told us that we were not moving any furniture, and they were opening the hotel the next day.
Oh, that wouldn't be.
So we were a little startled, to say the least. And what I actually ended up doing was hiring an attorney to.
Well, the job's still going, Larry?
Say that again?
Was the job still in process when you?
Oh, everything was sopping wet when they fired us. Yeah, I mean, we had just finished extraction and started the drying process. So they fired us, and they were going to occupy the space again with folks, and they had big events going on that week in the ballroom. So we hired an attorney and filed a lawsuit immediately to relieve us of any liability, because they obviously violated what was really reasonable to do. And according to the standards, obviously, this was a limitation on the job. And so as we filed the lawsuit to relieve us of liability, I presented them with a bill for $80,000, and they offered us $5,000. And the adjuster also mentioned to my employees that I must be on drugs. And so we went through the full lawsuit in court, and eventually won plus interest and all attorney's fees. But it was a pain in the neck, obviously. But you're dealing with people that he signed the contract. He understood exactly what he signed. But the insurance company.
Now, is everyone seem to have an authorization form that covers everything? I mean, has there been many cases with the folks that are on this particular call here? Is there enough? Okay. Yeah, I haven't had any problems, but I was just wondering if, I probably should take a look at mine and maybe update it, make sure that we're still covering the pertinent concerns of both parties. I mean, it's for both parties. It's only to protect them as well too. So.
Well, one of the things I know, because the people get are so upset, and they're generally emotional. They're generally not necessarily, they're kind of scattered. Sometimes they're completely in shock with what's going on. And what we always found was taking the time to sit down and go through the price lists, the procedures, and each one of the pages that we had, there was a place to initial or to sign, because there was more than one time that when we went back to get paid and they didn't think they should pay, and we went through that whole process and had them initial the bottom of it, we know you can't just hand them the stuff and expect them to read it. You really need to go through what you're doing, and then also have that initial that says that they did read this, because that's going to keep you from losing money in the long run.
Yeah, I like that. I like that idea of, I usually go through it with them all and go through the pricing as well too, but every now and then something like that will sneak up on someone. So,
Yeah. And the other comment with the story that Larry was talking about, when you get in a court case and you're dealing with, expert witnesses, they bring somebody in. So they brought in another contractor, another restorer, to be their expert witness. And the way that he was completely discredited was because when we got a hold of some of his paperwork to take a look at it, his pricing wasn't consistent. The charges that he had for air movers or dehumidifiers, the amount of time that he took or what he charged for even extraction was different. And there wasn't any documentation as to why he had varied from his pricing. So one of the reasons why it's so important to document, if you want to give somebody a discount, great, put it on there why you're giving them a discount. If you want to give a volume discount or something like that, but you need to be able to defend, because we discredited that witness. Basically, he had no bearing on the whole case because of the fact that he didn't stick to his pricing, or if he deviated from it, he didn't give any reason why he had. So you can't look like, as a restorer, you can't look like you're giving preferences to one person and not to another, or preferences to insurance companies and not to consumers, or whatever you want to do, because you will get torn apart if it ever comes to any kind of a legal proceeding. And of course, we're not wanting to work for free. So we do want to be able to collect what's fair and reasonable for the work that we're doing.
very good point, Trina. Very good point. I think all of us need to always kind of keep that in mind and make sure we pass it on to our technicians as well too. You can't help but document. So, well, I see we're at the end of our list there. Does anyone have any other questions? We wanted to make sure we stay within our time frame. So,
I've got 2 points that I wanted to bring up. One is this something that you should even be doing? Do you have the proper certifications? Have you gone through IICRC training so that you know what you're doing and not subjecting yourself to some kind of liability, actually doing more harm than good going in to try and do something that you thought was helpful? And secondly, do you have insurance that covers for things that you might miss? Do you have the proper testing tools to go into a job and know that you have completely dried it out and haven't left mold someplace that's going to cause problems for somebody in the home later?
Yeah.
good point,
Most
Clark.
important to document, and when you're done with that, document just a little bit more all the way around. One of the bigger things, and I know we can't get into a lot of it, but when you get into some water damage, many times it turns into a Category 3, something that wasn't previously taken care of, or they took care of themselves, and you've got mold underneath the carpet and behind the baseboard, Those are kind of one of those situations that what are you going to do when you get into that? And
Well,
maybe
you made it.
subject for another webinar.
Yeah, well, you made a good point a while back. I know when you and I, Steve, were working on a project where you're telling me groundwater anymore. I mean, by the time the water enters into the house, what has it got? What does it come through? Whether it's fertilizers or pesticides and things like that. So it's very, very seldom anymore that it's just a clean water or a category 1 water damage. Very, very seldom now because of where the water has intruded from. So. But I think that's an important point to always keep in mind, making sure we have the right classification of the water itself. So
I'm kind of laughing thinking about that because I was talking to a gentleman in the industry who was actually impacted by one of the hurricanes, and his house, he had things like frogs and snakes and other kind of water animals that actually had come into the house. And so they weren't just dealing with the water themselves, they were also dealing with critters.
reptiles.
Yeah.
All right. Well, unless anyone has anything else, I think we can conclude our answering the water call Zoom meeting here. I see you posted or put up on the screen here what else is happening with PACR. We are talking about not. Whoops, sorry, Andrew. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm just hitting the wrong buttons. Nothing.
Oh. All right. Well, like I said, we can review this. We're looking at not having a PACR holiday party this year, but what we'd like to do is plan an earlier event. I know we've written down here January the 14th on my notes here. We'd like to put together a New Year event event, and we'll just keep everyone abreast of what's going on there, and obviously the annual. I think we talked last time at our impromptu board meeting that we wanted to get together in December and just kind of put together a wish list of what we'd like to accomplish this year and in 2020 and move forward from there. So if anyone doesn't have anything else to add, then we'll conclude our meeting.
And our next, I think the next kind of Zoom meetup that we're going to be doing should be on December 17th. December 17th.
Okay. Andrew, you have a safe trip coming back home, and yeah, and thank everyone for tuning in today.
Thanks, guys.
Have a great one. Bye-bye.
You guys later.
You too. Thank you, Steve. Have a good Thanksgiving, everyone.
Yeah, you too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Happy Thanksgiving.